An elderly Chespirito was giving an interview via video call when a hand seemed to slip in from the upper left corner and hit him on the forehead. For many fans, the sequence of just a few seconds is evidence that Florinda Mesa, the second wife and castmate of Roberto Gomez Bolaños, exercised physical and psychological violence against the world-famous comedian. Much has been said over the years about the dynamics of a couple who met in the recording studio. From one of the most iconic shows in Mexican history, El Chavo del Ocho. And all the controversies surrounding the show grew with the premiere of Sin Querer Queriendo, the biopic about Chespirito, which Home Box Office releases weekly. However, Florinda Mesa is undoubtedly the most controversial figure. With a strong and determined character in front of the cameras apparently, she was also very dominant once the lights went out. Many people claim that the woman, in addition to having significant control over Chespirito's life, also greatly influenced the show's creative decisions. She was also manipulative, calculating, egotistical, and violent. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. As the series Sin Querer Queriendo progresses, it reveals details about the dynamics among the cast members of El Chavo del Ocho, and especially the way the relationship between Bolaños and Meza was forged. Was Florinda the one who caused several original cast members to slam the door on the project? Was she to blame for the show being off the air for years all over the world? Did Florinda Meza cause the divorce of some of her colleagues? What power does she have today over the legacy and inheritance of her late husband? In today's video, we'll discuss this and many other things. Welcome to the dark side of Florinda Meza. Remember that on this channel and the day of the premieres, we covered the excitement surrounding this series. Without wanting to want, this video aims to delve into some aspects of Florinda Meza. To learn more about the end of El Chavo, other characters' details, Chespirito's relationships with Latin American dictatorships, and more, you can go check out the rest of the works already uploaded. Lastly, what do you think about Florinda Meza? Watch the video first and then draw your own conclusions. And now let's get started. Born on February 8, 1949 in the town of Juchipila, Zacatecas, Florinda met Chespirito around the year 1970. She had a tough childhood, raised by her maternal grandparents after her parents' early divorce. She began to develop a strong and determined personality, as if knowing there would be no other way to make her way in a hostile world if she showed weakness. She had a great talent for writing, and it is said that at just 8 years old, she imagined and carried out her first play. She was drawn to art but hadn't decided on her focus, so she pursued both dramatic arts and music. With the 70s just beginning, Roberto Gomez Bolaños was already known by his eternal pseudonym. In fact, he had a show that bore his name and featured different comedy sketches that were becoming more and more successful. Taking this context into account, Florinda saw it as a huge opportunity when he invited her to participate in his show with small roles. She readily accepted and strived to do her best. She was a stunning 21-year-old actress with a screen presence that made her shine, despite her only prior acting experience being in video theater on Telesistema Mexicano. In 1968, when El Chavo del Ocho became an independent show, the phenomenon grew in a very short time. The bond between the cast members was also strong. In the early years, they described themselves as a big family, but they spent so much time together that this forced coexistence would eventually lead to other kinds of relationships. What a lovely neighborhood. Florinda was rumored to have had a short but passionate romance with Carlos Villagrán, already famous as Kiko. Although they played mother and son on screen behind the scenes, they had started a relationship that Villagrán supposedly did not want to continue. The actor stated that Florinda persistently pursued him, but he turned her down and sought Chespirito's guidance on distancing himself from her. On the other hand, the actress who played Doña Florinda and La Poppy always denied that version, and she stated that she would never have been with a man like that, whom she openly called an idiot. However, in Sin Querer Queriendo, Chespirito's biopic, there are direct allusions that this relationship existed. Beyond that, yes, it is confirmed that Florinda's first formal relationship with a member of the Chavo team was with Enrique Segoviano, the director of the project. Not only did they appear together in public, but by the mid-70s there was already talk of an imminent wedding. However, something changed everything. At some point, Florinda and Chespirito's relationship intensified, leading them to leave their partners and begin a life together. For Florinda, it meant separating from Segoviano, but for Chespirito, the decision was much more difficult and painful. He left his wife, Graciela Fernandez, and their 6 children. By that time, the marriage was falling apart because Chespirito was spending too much time away from home and his wife suspected he was being unfaithful. But beyond that famous attraction, there were seemingly others. Florinda stated in interviews that Ruben Aguirre, who played Professor Girafales, had also attempted to approach her. As if that wasn't enough, she added Ramon Valdez to her list of suitors. According to the woman, her neighbor in the show tried several times to give her a ride after filming, and not just out of courtesy, but to try to seduce her. The most uncomfortable part of this whole matter came with the words of Carlos Villagran's son, who directly accused Florinda of being the reason his father divorced his partner. He further claimed that Ruben Aguirre and Ramon Valdez's marriages were also jeopardized due to attempted affairs with Florinda. She always made it clear that she didn't allow these relationships to progress beyond a certain point. By that time, other things, much more complicated, were starting to happen inside the nice neighborhood, which every afternoon was watched by thousands of children. Power. As Florinda strengthened her relationship with Chespirito, her influence on the show also grew. She made creative decisions and sat next to Bolaños when planning the shows. As you can imagine, rivalries soon began to appear. Several actors from the show looked unfavorably on Florinda's role, accusing her of having an excessive prominence, while they were pushed into secondary roles. This dual leadership soon caused a small upheaval in the cast. Several actors from the original group began to leave the show. Don Ramon and Villagran's departure was clear. There were several reasons: wanting to develop their characters outside of Chespirito's influence, seeking better pay, and escaping Florinda's influence. However, others also felt uneasy around her. Maria Antonieta de las Nieves, who in the early years of Roberto's rise had formed a very deep friendship with him, also felt left out. Everything changed when Florinda began making the decisions. Moreover, the friendly rapport that the two women had established was starting to erode. De las Nieves even said that on one occasion, when they were returning from a tour in Argentina, they tried to smuggle some fur coats they had bought. Maria Antonieta managed to get through without security stopping her, but Florinda was told she couldn't go through with that. Then Bolaños' partner allegedly pointed at Maria Antonieta, saying that she was trying to do the same thing. Small acts like these, which the actress who played La Chilindrina would describe as mean and petty, gradually undermined a friendship that never really took shape. Finally, Maria Antonieta left the show and started an endless war over the rights to La Chilindrina. For many years, she didn't speak to Chespirito, but she also mentioned that she often wanted to fix their relationship and Florinda Mesa prevented her from doing so. In what way? By answering the phone at the property and not letting Chespirito talk to her? With these statements, suspicions grew that the woman had isolated one of the Mexican television icons. These were rumors that escalated to the point of becoming worrisome. Was Chespirito in danger? A strange relationship? Different interviews revealed a rather peculiar dynamic between Florinda and Chespirito, a dynamic that at times was uncomfortable. In public, the actress would often interrupt him, redirect his answers, and treat him in a dry and authoritative manner. The most unpleasant case happened when Mesa mentioned Chespirito's children and ex-wife and referred to them as flaws. She also mentioned that if she and Chespirito had had children, they would have been perfect, but that never happened because Chespirito had had a vasectomy. Some believe this situation irreparably damaged the relationship between Mesa and Bolaños' children. To this day, it's clear that the image they have of her is deeply negative, and that is reflected in the character that represents her in the home box office series. As Chespirito aged and his health deteriorated, Florinda seemed to have total control over his schedule and public appearances. It was then that a much more troubling rumor began to circulate that she was violent toward Bolaños, already an elderly and vulnerable man. And so our story returns to the beginning. One of the first to spread this possibility was Carlos Villagran, a declared enemy of Florinda and a detractor of Chespirito long before that. In an interview, the actor who played Kiko openly said that he had heard that Florinda Mesa used to hit her husband. Although this was never proven, the video we mentioned at the beginning seems to give some credibility to these claims. Was Chespirito a direct victim of Mesa? There's no way to know anymore because on November 18, 2014, Roberto Gomez Bolaños died. However, the controversies continued. Legacy. Much was said about the death of Chespirito and the tributes held in his honor to say goodbye to him. Some claim that the date of death was changed by Florinda herself to have enough time to plan the massive funeral that took place at the Azteca Stadium and was attended by about 50,000 fans. However, there is a highly complex issue to resolve beyond that, the inheritance. Florinda was entitled to a share but had to settle accounts with her late husband's children and Televisa. Chespirito's shows continued and still continue to generate great profits, both from their constant reruns and from the associated merchandising. However, relations between Mesa and the Bolaños family were strained, and major issues would soon emerge in the negotiations. For years, the relationship between the parties was said to be unfriendly until it finally exploded. On July 31, 2020, when El Chavo was removed from Mexican television and from all the channels around the world that were still airing the show. In some cases, it was the first time in decades and decades that the show had been taken off the air without interruption. It became known that there was a disagreement between the heirs and Televisa, and many quickly pointed to Mesa as the trigger for the conflict. The belief took hold that she was the one who threw a wrench in the works so that the show would stop airing, in her ambition to get more money. However, Mesa herself denied this version many times. She stated that she has no say in the show's broadcast and that, in fact, it was financially beneficial for her if the show stayed on the air. After 4 years, a new agreement allowed El Chavo and all of Chespirito's shows to return. Thus, the way was open to keep talking about what happened behind the scenes, this time with the children taking the lead. Without meaning to, but meaning to. When a biopic on Chespirito's life and work was announced, most people expected to see the on-set soap opera unfold. In that sense, the series did not disappoint. A big part of the appeal of each episode has to do with revealing secrets about what happened when the cameras were off. Romances, betrayals, and conflicts are the trending topics on the internet every week after a new episode airs. Produced by Chespirito's children, it's clear that the show is made from their point of view. And in this context, Florinda appears as a clear villain under another name, hiding her identity for legal reasons, affected by the way the real Florinda is being portrayed. Mesa has used her social media in recent weeks to deny anecdotes and details from the series. She has announced plans to release her own series, sharing her perspective. She also mentioned her difficult health situation due to the bitterness of being described that way. How much truth is there in this story? Have Chespirito's children taken the opportunity to get effective revenge? Is the series the result of years and years of speculation about the best way to bring down the person who always treated them with contempt? Will Florinda Mesa be able to counter everything that has been said against her? And more importantly, did she really mistreat her husband when he was still alive? Perhaps only one other person besides her knew the truth, but that individual is now deceased. It's clear that the man who was able to script shows that still make millions today was unable to control the course of his final days, leaving behind a series of dark and dramatic questions.